Namibia, and I'll be giving you a short presentation on the challenges of the ASM sector in Namibia and the role of the Geological Survey. As you'll notice in this presentation, I will not be using the word ASM. I'll be using small-scale mining because in Namibia we don't have the difference between artisanal and small-scale mining. We call all of them small-scale miners. I just want to give you a short country profile on our country. We have a republic in the president system. Our president is Dr. Hage Geingob, and our capital is Windhoek, and that's the area. I just make this presentation, this slide mainly for the population, because some of the numbers that I might be showing you in there might not make sense if you do not know our population. We are only 2.4. We've been 2.3 for a long time, but apparently now we are 2.48. We got our independence in 21. Tomorrow is actually our Independence Day. Mining is the backbone of our economy, but we also have fishing, agriculture, and tourism. Just a brief also on the mining industry. We have Namibia is rich in mineral resources. Can you still hear me? Because I can't hear. Diamonds, uranium, copper, gold, lead, and zinc, and iron, those mainly mined by the large-scale miners. And we have industrial minerals, dimension stones, and semi-precious stones. Those are the ones mined by the small-scale miners. They are reserved only for Namibians. And mining contributes about 11% to the GDP. And as of 2016, the total revenue to the states was about $413 million US. This map is just showing where our large-scale mines are located in the country. Let's start off with the small-scale mining. We say we have about 8,000 to 10,000 small-scale miners countrywide. This is just an estimate because not all of them are registered. We also have an issue of illegal miners. So we have about 8,000, between 8,000 and 10,000 small-scale miners. And they mine about 35 types of minerals and semi-precious stones. And 80% of their activities is actually within the semi-precious stones and the mineral specimens. But we also have those that mine dimension stones and industrial minerals. And we also have a few that are mining base and rare metals. And we have our small-scale miners are mainly in 3 regions of our country, mainly Erongo, Kunene, and Kars. I'll show you in the next slide. This is just to show. One, two. Is this better? Okay. Better? No? It's not better?
Still good.
It's good? Oh, okay. This is just, I just feel like I don't know why I should say it.
What do you need a pointer? Yeah, but our table is too short.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
This is just to show where some minerals are found in the country. And the 3 regions that I mentioned earlier, Erongo is somewhere where most of them are pointing. That's where we have large numbers of small-scale miners, but we also have some in the south and in the northwest, and a few. But here, there used to be activities on small-scale mining, but recently we don't have any activities there. And just to add on that, it's legal to purchase gemstones in Namibia and export them. All you need to do is get a receipt from the seller who should be registered. They should be a registered small-scale miner, because we will check it on our system. Even though it takes a day, they will check it on the system if the small-scale miner is registered or not. And our ministry, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, will issue with an export permit. regulations and licenses that are applicable to small-scale miners. These two regulations, the first one is the Mineral Prospecting and Mining Act of number 33 of 1992. It's an old act, but it's currently under review. And we have the Environmental Management Act number 7 of 2007. These are the same regulations we use for the large-scale mines. We don't have one specific for the small-scale miners. And small-scale miners have two licenses. The non-exclusive prospective license, which allows you to prospect on any land throughout Namibia. You are not only limited to one area, you can prospect anywhere in the country. And you need permission from private-owned lands. Because in Namibia, most of the land, the whole country is actually like farming. It's demarcated. It's hard to find an area where there are gemstones and it's not in somebody's land. So one will need permission from the landowner. And also, our minerals are vested in the state. The farmers only own the land, but not the minerals. And applicants must be 18 years old and above. And the license is valid for 12 months. And it cannot be transferred or renewed. You just have to apply for a new one. And it costs about $4 US. And before you apply for a mining claim, the mining claim is the one that allows you to mine, because with the prospecting mine, you only prospect but you cannot mine. But as we know, in Namibia, you will find small-scale miners who only have an NEPL, but you will find them mining, so that's one of the challenges also. For the mining claim, you have to be a Namibian citizen or Namibian company. Same with the non-exclusive prospecting license, because small-scale mining is reserved for Namibians. It's valid for 3 years, and it can be renewed after every 2 years, but it does not expire. So that one is just for you for life. The maximum area is 18 hectares, and the dimensions are 300 meters by 600 meters. And one can own up to 10 claims, and it can be spread. It can be on one area, or it can be spread out throughout the country. And it also costs the same amount as the NEPL. And as I mentioned earlier, the holder of the mining claim is allowed to mine or extract minerals. Before I move on to challenges, since this is supposed to be a presentation on challenges, I also want to just mention some of the support that we give to our small-scale miners in the country. We assist them with pegging of claims, because after you have obtained your non-exclusive prospecting license, once you have found an area, you are required to demarcate your area. And not all the small-scale miners can do that, but our ministry can send officials to do pegging for them. This is just to show an example of how it should be marked. And this example here was one of the small-scale miners who actually had a GPS. Not all of them have GPSs, but once they have a GPS, it's easier. They send us coordinates, and now, like you see there, my colleague has used the Google Earth just to plot, and then we can see that it's not straight, and then we can help them in that way to make sure that it's 600 by 300 meters, and then they can apply for their mining claim. And one thing that I wanted to mention with this, it makes it easier for us, because with budget constraints, sometimes we cannot go in the field. At least once, if the small-scale miner has a GPS, it's easier for us, and then they can apply. Because one of the challenges that we have is also that the ministry is only in the capital city, and as I mentioned, the different regions. Some small-scale miners cannot travel to the capital city to come and apply apply for the mining claim. We also sponsor them to attend trade fairs and conferences. Like last year in October, they attended the International Geology Conference, where they can showcase their stones. And this is also one of the things that we use to encourage small-scale miners to have valid mineral rights. because we cannot sponsor a small-scale miner who does not have valid mineral rights. So what they do, they bring in their stones. We call in somebody who's an expert, who's maybe in the trading industry, to check for them which stones are of good value to be, so that they can showcase it to those that are interested to buy. We also encourage them to form associations and cooperatives. Like this picture here. This is a cooperative. It's called Uba-US. That's just a sign showing it's on. If you have been to Namibia on your way to Swakopmund, you'll see that sign there showing the crystal market. And it's one of the successful cooperatives that we have in Namibia, and it's headed by women. And some just showcase their stones on the alongside the road. And this is just a photo of some of the small-scale miners in the south, far south. They have formed their association. And for association, this also makes it easy when there's even if it's a government or a private company that wants to assist small-scale miners, it makes it easy for them to get a benefit. It benefits a lot of people than to just sponsor one person. We have capital projects for them. Currently, we only have 2. We had 6, but only 2 are in the process of implementation. This is a cutting and polishing facility that has been set up just to help promote industrialization and value addition, because we would like to stop the small-scale miners from selling their products raw. When they sell it, once it's cut and polished, at least it has value and it benefits them better when they just sell it like that. And this is expected to employ about 15 workers, and we want the small-scale miners, because this is in one of the Kunene region is in the northwest, where small-scale miners in that area can take their rocks for a fee, and then it will be cut and polished. That's the idea behind it. And we also want to employ people in that area to support local content. Another project that we have is on processing flake stone for building materials. No, Dover is it's far south, and they are producing. There are about 13 small-scale miners employed, and they produce about over 30,000 tiles to date. And the challenge we have is it's in the south and it's very isolated. It's in the isolated area. The tiles are very good, but the problem is just that we cannot get customers for the tiles. But we are doing our best on the marketing. And this is just some pictures that my colleague took. She visited the area just before we came here, the different tiles that they cut. And also one of the good things is the people in the area, the offcuts that we get from the tiles, they use it like you see in this picture. So this is also helping us on waste management, so we don't have a lot of waste because people are finding use for the offcuts. And for my colleagues in South Africa, it's close to Kimberley and Springbok. If you know somebody who's interested in tiles, we need customers, please. And we also liaise with other stakeholders just to assist our small-scale miners. Recently, we had a study done by Regia. This is a study on the situation analysis for the small-scale mining industry and collected specimen. It's just a study done for where our small-scale miners are and what they are mining. The Dr. Priester is the one who did this study with 2 of our colleagues. And in this book, you will find all the challenges on our small-scale miners and how many years they've been mining and if they have recovered some things. We have about 6 copies. We will give 1 to each country. And we also had a study done by the Namibian University. And together with the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and SME Development. This one is available online. It's on the growth strategy for the jewelry industry. The idea behind is for promotion of our gemstones, and they actually want to set up a manufacturing plant where there will be value addition and different products being done from the gemstones. And because we have a problem with our raw materials, as I mentioned earlier, we export raw materials, and in between the Namibians are not really benefiting. They will sell a stone maybe for $2, and then somebody will go and cut and polish it, and then they will sell it maybe even for $3,000 US. So that's what we want to do. And also the Legal Assistance Center is the one that, and Ministry of Agriculture, they assist us with the formation of associations and cooperatives. And Ministry of Environment and Tourism, they issue the environmental clearance certificates. Because before you get a mining license, you have to have an environmental clearance certificate. And as I've mentioned that most of our mining is in private owned land, there always arise disputes. And so we have mineral ancillary rights, which constitutes of a chairperson and 2 other members, a secretary. Those members, the 3 members are chosen by the president, and they have a secretary. It's like a mini court. So whatever issues the small-scale miners have, they have to issue a complaint, they send it to the secretary, and then their issues can be taken up. Like Mr. Free has mentioned yesterday, that without geology, you cannot go anywhere. You can offer the small-scale miners money, but if they don't know the geology, they will not go anywhere. So our Geological Survey is the one that offers all the geological information, the economic geology and the regional mapping divisions. Small-scale miners can request for information from the Geological Survey, and they can get it. The only problem, like I've mentioned before, the issue with this is we are in the capital city, and most of our small-scale miners are in the rural areas, so we get very few that come in for that. And also, you will see in the challenges also what challenges we have as regulators. And they also have the geochemistry and laboratory division, which offers free analytical services for small-scale miners that are registered. And this picture is just to show one of our colleagues using the XRF analyzer in just a map. Just a map of the occurrence map for concrete in the northern part of Namibia. Now moving on to challenges that SSM face. Equipment, I put there number 1, because if you speak to small-scale miners, if you've asked them what do they need, they will always tell you equipment. They will never tell you that they need geological information. But equipment is the number 1. Lack of proper mining equipment, that you can see in this picture. That's not the right tool, and you can see that the miner is not even wearing protective clothing. And access to finance. Since this business is a risky one, no bank is willing to give them any loans to buy equipment or anything like that, because they might not be able to pay back. And on the market, most miners sell their products on the below market value, because we do not have formal market structures. And cash management is one of them. Our people do not know how to manage money. You find small scale, the challenge that we have is we still do not have, actually I haven't seen a small scale miner who has been maybe mining for, let's say 10, 20 years or more than that, who can show really anything for that. So that's also a challenge. And land issues, like I've mentioned before, limited access to private farms to conduct exploration and mining exploration. So this is also a big issue, because I've also experienced it myself, where we went to a farm, the owner of the farm, if it's that easy for the regulators, now imagine for the small-scale miners. Health and safety, I've mentioned of no use of PPE and safe mining practices. And it's not like they did not have any assistance. There are some big mines that, like Rosin Uranium, is a uranium company, they've offered some protective clothing to small-scale miners, but that can only last for a while. And if our small-scale miners do not have that understanding on themselves that they need protective clothing, it's still not going to help them in the long run. And rehabilitation, lack of expertise and finance to rehabilitation mines. Rehabilitation is not only just on lack of expertise. Sometimes you find the small-scale miner, they've left that land maybe, or that pit for like 3 to 5 years, and then why are you not rehabilitating? They will tell you that they are just resting for now and they'll go back later. So rehabilitation is a big issue. The challenges that we face as regulators, the first one is the non-compliance with the mineral rights. And it's not only on pertaining to mining transition or rehabilitation, but also with their production. The small-scale miners are very committed. Most of them do not report on how much they are producing. We only have a few. And since we offer some support, the support we use is support also as a strategy for maybe some small-scale miners if they want to be sponsored in the future. If we have your records that you report to us, then we can sponsor you. Budget constraints. We are not. We are supposed to go in the field to do mining inspections, but with budget constraints, we cannot do that as often as possible. Especially the past 2 financial years, it has been very, very low. And lack of funds to implement the project that have been found technically feasible. Like I mentioned earlier, we had 6 capital projects, but we can only implement 2 of them so far. We had clay projects, but we couldn't implement those ones. And delay and inability of small-scale miners to form associations. So far, we only have 3 associations, but we would encourage them to form associations in different regions. Also have no central market for small-scale miners to sell their products. Like the one that I showed is just for one cooperative, but we do not have a central one where all the small-scale miners can come in and sell their products. The socio-economic significance, even though we don't know how much the small-scale mining sector contributes to GDP, the study was done that it has a positive and direct economic impact at the household level in rural and remote areas. And the reason why the government had come up even with for the small-scale mining division is it was part of poverty eradication. And we have, at corporate level, we have 2% royalty which is payable to the government for all exports of gemstones. And in most rural areas, this is the source of income for everything that they do. So if a miner does not have stones, sometimes some cannot even send their children to school. In conclusion, if the small-scale mining subsector is properly funded and organized, it can significantly reduce the prevailing high rates of unemployment. And in Namibia, we know we have a high untapped mineral resource, and it has a high potential to contribute to the economic development of our country. I thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you all hear me? Okay, my name is Ms.Tshilidzi Mudau. Tshilidzi means grace. So my other name is Princess. So if you can't pronounce Tshilidzi, you can call me Princess. I'm from South Africa, east of Namibia. We are neighbors. So I did not come alone. I came with my colleague, Ms. Sisanda Gasamba. Her surname is also difficult for me. So I will, like Namibia, I will also be talking about challenges of the small-scale mining and also our role as the Geological Survey. So, but our company previously was called Geological Survey of South Africa, but is now Council for Geoscience, but it's the same thing as the other Geological Survey. So I will give you a brief overview of our small-scale mining in South Africa, and I will also talk about our regulations and also the challenges that the sector is facing, and also elaborate on the role of our Geological Survey. So in our country we are, I think 6 times or 100 times more than Namibians, because we are about 60 million, our population. So our country, we have 9 provinces, and our small-scale miners are all over these 9 provinces. So it's quite a big country. So since I came here, I realized that our small-scale mining is very small as compared to other African countries. So we don't really call our small-scale mining artisanal and small-scale mining. Like Namibia, we also call them small-scale miners. So for the sake of presentation, I decided to use ASM so that we'll be like others, so that you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. But from our group discussion yesterday, I realized that in other countries, what they call small-scale mining, in our country, we call it junior mining companies. So it's a bit different. So, but I will try my best to make you understand our small-scale mining in South Africa. So, like I said, we use the ASM interchangeable with small-scale mining. So, our ASM is defined using the National Small Business Amendment Act of 2003. So this act defines our ASM in accordance to the equivalent of paid employees and also the capital investment and also the asset value. So, like I said, our small-scale mining is very small. So their operation mostly is composed of less than 50 people, and also their annual turnover has to be less than 10 million. And also their asset is supposed to be less than 15 million. So this is what we call small-scale mining in South Africa. So before 1994, our government was under apartheid regime. So our small-scale mining is fairly new. Only started to be recognized post-1994 when we had our democracy. So it was recognized in 1994 as a vehicle to foster social and economic growth through participation of historically disadvantaged South Africans, and we call them HDSA. So like I said, we have 9 provinces, and our ASM is widespread across all these 9 provinces. We have Gauteng, we have KwaZulu-Natal, we have Mpumalanga, we have Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Free State, Limpopo, Northwest, and Northern Cape. And these operations are all over our country. So unlike other African countries, we are blessed because our Ministry of, we call them departments of mineral resources, their head office is in our capital city, Pretoria, but they have offices in all these provinces, which makes it easier for our small-scale miners to get access to the ministry. And our company as well, I will talk on our company. We have our head office in Pretoria, then we also have offices in all these, most of these provinces. So access is quite better as compared to other countries. That's what I've noticed. So, like Namibia, they mine industrial minerals, dimension stones, and semi-precious minerals. But they also mine gold, coal, and diamonds. But most of gold operations are operating illegally from the Wits basin where they are mining gold. So, our ASM is regulated by our Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act 28 of 2002. We call this act MPRDA. So like I said, we are a new country. I mean, our democracy is only 20-something, I think 22 or 24 years. So this act is Act of 2002. So the act recognizes all forms of mining, including the small-scale mining. But the small-scale mining is recognized through a mining permit, which is issued by the Department of Mineral Resources. So the small-scale miners, they only require one license, which is a mining permit. Because our small-scale mining, like I said, is very, very small. So, Section 27 of this Act states that a mining permit is issued only if the mineral in question can be mined optimally within a period of 2 years. And the areal extent is also very small, only 1.5 hectares. So you can see that our small-scale mining is very small. So, but there was an amendment to this act. So the MPRDA Act of 2002 was amended in 2008. In this amendment, it was proposed to extend the area of mining from 1.5 hectares to 5 hectares. But this bill is not signed yet. So as it stands, they are still mining 1.5 hectares within a period of 2 years. They can extend, every 2 years they can extend up to 5 years. So our small scale mining, you can see, is very small. So I would like to talk about the challenges that this sector is facing in South Africa. Like any other countries, it's like we have more or less similar challenges that this sector is facing. So in South Africa, the biggest challenge is finance. So they all want money. Unlike Namibia, they do not come to us asking for equipment. They want money so that they can buy equipment for themselves. So finance or capital is the biggest challenge. And also access to mineral rights. I will elaborate on this because our process is very long to can get these mining permits in South Africa. And also access to skills and technology. Technology in terms of mining and processing. And also access to technical support and also to information. Access to markets and also the regulation requirements, because it's quite a long process with so many requirements. So I will elaborate on some of these challenges. And because of these challenges that the sector is facing, we end up having more of illegal operations because the government wants so many things to be done, or they have so many requirements that needs to be met before you can actually start mining. So most people, they opt to mine illegally because they do not have money, they do not have 1, 2, 3, so they end up mining illegally. So we have a problem also with illegal mining. So I wanna expand on access to capital. So entry to ASM sector is quite difficult in our country, with only few applicants being able to afford the financial obligation. So this obligation is one of the requirements when you are applying for mining permits or for prospecting rights or for mining rights. So as a result, the profile of our ASM is changing. So the formal sector is made up of emerging entrepreneurs who has financial resources than the historically disadvantaged South Africa. Like I said when I started, the small-scale mining was meant for poor people. But because poor people can't meet all these requirements, so now we have people who have access to money, who are now called small-scale miners because they do have money. They can meet all the financial obligations. So now the same people that the sector was created for are not able to meet all these requirements. Then they end up mining illegally. So the current regulatory framework favors those with financial means because they have a big list of things that you need to meet before they can actually grant you a permit. So our government, through the Department of Mineral and Resources, established initiatives to provide funding for ASM. So in the year 2000, that was before our Act of MPRDA was established. So the DMR established the National Steering Committee of Service Provider. We call it NSC, to provide technical, managerial, and financial support to small-scale mining projects. My husband used to sit on this committee. So it was the aim was to help them with finance, to offer them with technical support. So it worked for a few years. People were, the small-scale mining were getting access to money. They were working on their projects. But because we were poor or we were disadvantaged, and if you give someone who was very poor lots of money to can start their projects, sometimes they no longer prioritize funding their projects. They want to buy themselves cars, they want to build themselves houses. So this initiative only lasted for 5 years because there was no progress. People were not working on their projects. So 90% of these funds, it was offered as a loan. So the idea is that we are giving you, let's say, 9 million, then you must be able to produce 1 million. So out of this 9 million, you're gonna buy equipment, you will cover operational costs, and you will also meet your rehabilitation obligations. Then when you start making profit, you must be able to pay this money back. I'm telling you, our government never got their money back because people were no longer using the very same money on the projects they were supposed to be working on. So our government really tried to sponsor the small-scale miners to eradicate poverty. So as a result, this program was discontinued in 2005 because majority of the projects failed. So in 2006, the government did not give up. They said, okay, let's come with a new initiative and see if we will be able to help our poor people. So they replaced the National Steering Committee with a small-scale mining board. So they allocated funds for small-scale mining, and these funds were sitting with us as the Geological Survey. So we're mandated by our Department of Mineral Resources to help small-scale miners from the beginning to the end with their projects. So with this money, we'll be able to go to their sites, we'll be able to help them with documentation, we'll be able to, that are required for mining permit application, we'll be able to help them with setting up their operations, buying them equipment, and offering them technical support. That was 2006. So this only lasted, I think, 2 years, because 2008, it was also discontinued because of the same problem that the National Steering Committee faced. So when you go back to their, let's say 5 months ago, you helped these individuals by setting up their operations. When you go back for monitoring, You won't find anyone on the site. You'll be just seeing machineries and equipments being vandalized. Nothing is going on. So then, as a result, our ministry decided to stop providing funding to small-scale miners. So as it stands, we no longer fund them like we used to do from 2000 until 2008. So another challenge is access to mineral rights, but finance, because our government stopped funding them directly, is number one. So access to mineral rights is also a barrier, mainly because of costs that you're supposed to pay. So the application process is quite long in South Africa. Yesterday I learned that in Zambia you can get it within a month. In South Africa it can take up to a year. I think minimum is like 9 months to can actually get your your mining permit. Because there are so many requirements that you need to meet before they can actually grant you. So they do not grant you the license first and you meet the requirements later. Because they lost lots of money, they make it difficult for you to get that right. So you need to meet all these obligations before the permit is granted. So some of these obligations are environmental management plan or environmental management, environmental impact assessment for big deposits. So you need to have that in place before. You need to do consultation with the landowners and affected parties. Like Namibia or maybe Zambia, our government owns the mineral rights and we as citizens will own the surface rights. And that's a challenge as well because someone is applying through the department. So now you yourself as an applicant, you are the one who must do these consultations with the landowners. And it's a challenge for our small-scale miners. Because now you have to negotiate. Maybe sometimes you give them percentage to your company. So it becomes difficult because it takes long as well to do these consultations. So because we had so many illegal mining activities and so many mining operations before, post our democracy, we had problem with rehabilitation. We have so many derelict and ownerless mines. Because of this problem, so now you need to have financial provision in place for rehabilitation. It's money, so the government can say they want, depending on your operation, they might want 1 million or 50 million for rehabilitation. You need to have that money before the license is granted. So that money, you actually take it to the Department of Mineral Resources. It sits with them. So if they want, let's say 100,000, you give them that money before they grant you a license. So it's also a challenge for our small-scale miners because they do not have this money. So, and also another challenge or another expectation or requirement is proof of technical ability. Like our lecture yesterday, it was talking about geology, that's technical support. You need to have a proof. You attach that proof that I have my geologist who will be offering this technical support when I start mining. So you need a CV or a profile of a geologist or a company. Previously, it was us as the Geological Survey who will attach that. Maybe 2 scientists from Council for Geoscience will be offering support to this geologist or a scientist who will be offering you with technical support. So you attach it with your application. You can see it's quite a long process. And also water use license. So your application go through various departments. You have to take it to water affairs, environmental affairs, so many departments. So you need all of this. You have to meet all of these requirements before a license is granted. So most people, they give up before they can even actually have a permit. Remember, the minister yesterday, he was talking about more than 2,000 licenses were being granted but only 20 are operational. So that is a problem. But in our country, it's different because it's quite a long process. We don't have so many people sitting with rights that they're not operational. So the rights are only granted after the above requirements are met. So this can take up to 9 months if you are lucky, or 12 months. So it's quite a long process. So with financial provision or technical provision, sometimes people do not have like money sitting in their banks. So that's when they go and look for investors. So now it's another challenge that our government is facing, because our people, they sometimes knows how to cheat the system. They will provide all of this, especially the finance and the technical. They will say, I've got an investor who's willing to invest 20 million, only to realize after the license is granted, nothing is happening because that investor is nowhere to be found. So the government is also facing a big challenge, because some people, they can get the payments, but they do not have money to start mining. And also because our government requires, in any company, you need to have at least 20% blacks in your company. So now you find maybe foreign investors who are not black, they will say, okay, I'm going to fund you, I'm going to invest in this project. Then they rob our people. They are investing maybe 50 million, they will say, okay, you are giving me 95% of your company. Then they cheat the system, they say they want 90% or 95%, but on purpose they will say they only have 74% to meet the black economic empowerment requirement. So before 2011, applications were done manually, but it was not a problem because we have offices in all our 9 provinces. So since 2011, there's an online system that our applicants are able to apply online. But for small-scale miners, it's a challenge because the system is too advanced, no access to computers, and application fees need to be paid electronically. So it's a challenge for them. Another challenge is access to market. So I will not talk more because of time constraint. Most of our small-scale operators are based in rural areas, so it becomes a challenge to get access to the market. So now I'll just elaborate on our role as a Geological Survey or Council for Geoscience, but I did spoke a lot about our role. So CGS is one of the technical institutions of the Department of Mineral Resources. So we have CGS, we have Mintech, which is a mineral processing company. We have so many institutions under DMR. So we are mandated to develop and maintain national geoscience infrastructure that addresses mapping, documentation of geology, collection and storing of all geoscience data. So this is some of the services that we provide as CGS. So I just want to focus on the support that we offer to small-scale mining. So we have various databases. We have Semindaba, this is our mineral database. We have coal and core database. We also have Africa database. So when the small-scale miners, now that our government is no longer offering direct support, we support them with information and compilation of documents. So now, the small-scale miners, they come to our offices. So we give them mineral information, we do geological reports for them, we compile all the necessary documents that are required for application of the mining permit. So these are the technical services that we provide to the small-scale miners, like I said. So all our big mining companies are also required to submit all their reports and also the boreholes information that they've drilled. But this information is also confidential. But let's say perhaps someone came with a farm, and they want advice. So I'm able to check on our geological maps and also from our previous records if the mineral in question is available, then I offer advice to them. So this is some of the type of the information that we provide as the Geological Survey. So this is a map that is showing distribution of minerals amenable to small-scale miners throughout our country. So then we zoom in. Let's say someone wants information on a specific province. We are able to sell these maps for them at a reasonable price. So this is distribution of minerals in Gauteng province. So we also zoom as well to a specific farm, because now they are bringing their specific property that they want to apply or they want to mine. So we zoom into their specific area. So this is some of the projects that we are working on as the Council for Geoscience. So I will not talk more on this project because of time, but currently we were busy working on this amethyst project because people are mining illegally in this area. I'll just show you a photo. So they are mining amethyst from Quartz Bay. You see they are mining next to their houses. So currently we are busy working on this project. We are doing detailed geological investigation to also quantify the deposit. So DMR is thinking of moving their houses to another area, and so that they will be able to mine nicely, because now this is a risk. So these are some of the projects and some of the things that our small-scale miners are producing in South Africa, and also the breaks. Thank you.
So you have small-scale mining?
We do.
Yeah. We don't have time for any question, I'm sorry, but you will meet during the... Is Mr. Nguni from the GSD here in Zambia will talk about the mineral processing technique. Good, floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go into mineral processing. I'm sure we have already talked about a number of things already. Yesterday we talked about the geology. Microphone. How's my voice outside?
Can you hear?
It's fine. I like it. I need a mic?
Yes.
I don't, yeah? I like to talk with my hands sometimes, so please allow me to be free to do that. Okay, I was saying yesterday we already got into the geology aspect and we talked about a few things there. And my director also told us a few things about what the Geological Survey department is able to do. Then we also got an introduction on exploration. Just today we've also had a number of presentations concerning the different geological surveys within our region. At this point, I think we'll be getting to discuss a few things about mineral processing. We get the minerals, then what? Okay, so I think let me just also say I like history a bit, so if you've read what I wrote, you'll notice that I took us back in time a bit, so let's just look into that also as we'll be talking. In terms of our presentation today, my outline will take this form. The first part, I'll give us the introduction. I'll talk about two things in there, that's a definition, and also a brief background on artisanal small scale. Then I'll get into the mineral processing techniques. I'll talk about comminution itself, and I'll give an example looking at the magnetite processing at Namatombo here in Zambia. Then I'll talk about the concentration methods. In that part, I'll talk mostly about flotation and dense media separation. Then the last part will be our talking on the metal extraction methods. That's the theory of copper smelting and hydrometallurgy. Then we'll also talk about metal recovery from solution and then gold processing. I don't know how much time we have in terms of how quickly I can be able to go through the material, but I think I'll try by all means to at least touch a bit on every other area where we have highlighted. So like I said, in terms of background, we are looking at mineral processing and asking ourselves, where did mineral processing start from? Like in Zambia, I couldn't get to the specific place, but I think going back to the time before the early men in Zambia, mineral processing was being practiced. Before the time of the early man, we also call the broken hill man. We believe that man used to make tools that he needed to utilize for his daily living. And as you can see, to make tools, you need to carry out a certain process on the material itself before that you can have them useful. So this is basically what I'm talking about here. In the second part, after the discovery of fire, like say at Kalambo Falls, you notice that the techniques of mineral processing for this early man changed. He was now able to use clay minerals to make clay pots. Okay, he would take them into the fire, burn them, and produce a material that he could utilize. Because also of the start of fire, he was able to now begin to extract metals from the ores that he was able to find in nature. Okay. So, as you can see, in the life of the early man, he was able to use mineral processing to make tools. These tools he was able to utilize in the different areas of his life. He was able to make hoes, he was able to make axes that were used in different areas of his life. We also notice another thing as life is continuing moving forward, that technologies now came into place. He had mineral processing equipment, like the furnaces that were used to process the raw materials themselves. So a lot of advancements are made in his life as he continues to live. So what I want us to note from here is that in considering the life of the older man, he was able to make tools from natural materials. Okay? So I think this part is just what we need to take note of as we continue. In considering the life of man in the old Zambia, mineral processing can be identified as the processing and purification of natural materials, fashioning and transforming them into useful tools. So the aim of everything is to make useful tools. So in the first instance, we are considering the treatment of pebble stones, breaking the stones with stones to produce sharp cutting tools. And in the second instance, we are considering the ore by sorting it out and also making it into the necessary materials that he needed to make the Okay. The other part I was just trying to get us through, seeing what the presentation is going to be like. I'm going to talk about mineral processing, like I said, in 3 different stages. The first part is mostly the crushing part, the aspect of breaking the material and producing it into a kind of material that can be concentrated. And then in the latter part, I'm considering now the metal extraction from the concentrated material. Okay. So now just to get into the presentation itself, allow me just to get us to define what mineral processing is. Okay. So mineral processing, when you consider it as a science, had a base, and that base was brought to us by a man called Gregorius Agricola. Gregorius Agricola had made a statement, and in this statement, we see something that helps us to define what mineral processing is. What he said was that since natural materials, since nature usually creates metals in an impure state, mixed with earth, stone, and solidified juices, it is necessary to separate most of these impurities from the ores as far as can be before they are smelted. So in looking at the statement that he had made, he was trying to say that nature gives us a blessing. It gives us a material which we can use. But this particular material is not of the quality that can be utilized for the tools. It has certain impurities associated with it. So what he was trying to say is that before we can use this material, it needs to be treated, or it needs to be made better. And in making his statement, he was considering the material that was going into the furnaces for burning to produce the metals. So as he's making this statement, he's trying to look at mineral processing itself as a technique for preparing material before it goes into the smelting. Okay. So the first definition that we have for mineral processing is the one that is given like for people who are in the mineral sciences themselves as the pre-treatment of mineral ores comprising of processes such as crushing, grinding, and flotation. These processes are basically aimed at concentrating materials before they are taken into the furnaces. Okay. So before you have your pyrometallurgy, before you have your hydrometallurgy, you carry out mineral processing. The second definition that we have of mineral processing is the definition as is given in the Mines and Minerals Development Act. In this definition we see, let me just read it again, it says that the beneficiation or liberation of valuable minerals from their ores, which may involve a number of unit operations such as crushing, grinding, classification, flotation, electrostatic separation, calcination, and other processes that are following down there. If you look at this particular definition and the other, this definition that we have in the Mines and Minerals Development Act is broader. It covers a lot of other processes. So it considers mineral processing not only as a tool for preparing materials that are headed for the furnace, but it considers mineral processing as the whole process, starting from the preparation of the material that is headed into the furnaces, and also to extracting of metals from those materials in the furnaces, also in hydrometallurgy, and in the other processes. And I think this general definition is the definition which will carry on as we continue to consider mineral processing as a general processing of materials. Not just where we are making materials ready to take into the furnaces, but also to make them into end tools or material for making other end tools. Okay. So briefly, I'm just going to look at the artisanal small-scale mining, like in the Zambian setup. Artisanal small-scale mining operations in Zambia are activities carried out within the areas between 3.34 and 6.68 hectares, okay, under the artisanal mining license rights. Then we also have what we consider as the small-scale mineral right, which ranges between 10 to around 400 hectares in terms of area. So when we are considering mineral processing on the artisanal scale, it is being considered within this particular region. The mineral processing itself is an operation which is performed without needing a lot of complex equipment, a lot of complex technology, or a high capital. When we are looking at mineral processing, we see that mineral processing in Zambia in the past has been very useful. Okay? It started far much earlier than the today mining as we know. We know of the copper belt mines right now because of what they are able to give to our economy. But before the establishment of these mines, the small-scale artisanal mines had been there in Zambia, and they were still being useful to our economy. So when we consider the small-scale artisanal mining like in Zambia, we see that a number of minerals had been processed by the small-scale artisanal mines. Okay. We had a company called Mediocre Small Mines exploiting deposits of manganese. Okay. And this manganese was utilized for creating dense media material which was used for separating coal or for purifying coal in the Mamba collieries. Another material that was processed was materials such as manganese for dry cell use, for dry battery cell use. And then we also had other materials such as gold and copper that were being processed. So as we continue to discuss our topic, we'll be looking at some of these processing techniques that were done in the past to try and see how mineral processing was able to be used to generate these materials. Okay. So now I think we can get into discussing our techniques of mineral processing. And to start with, we'll be talking about the crushing and the grinding, looking at the magnetite processing at Namatongo. Magnetite processing at Namatongo highlights the initial treatment operations carried out in mineral processing. Stages involved include crushing, grinding, and classification. What the process was like at Namatongo was that iron of about 95% iron oxide was ground to 3 different particle sizes. Like I said, these particle sizes were utilized in the dense media, okay, that was used to concentrate our coal or to clean the coal. In terms of flow sheet, this was the stages that were conducted in that particular processing. The first part was primary crushing, the secondary crushing, then we had grinding, and then followed by classification. In classification, the materials were separated into 3 different size products. Okay. So what we need to observe here is basically the technique of crushing itself, which we call comminution. There is 2 things there which are important to take note of. The first one is that the intention of comminution is basically to reduce on the particle size. Okay. As we can see in this particular flow sheet, there is classification there, but the main objective is to create a certain kind of powder or a certain kind of material of a certain mesh size that can be used in the forward processes. Okay, so that's one objective. The second one is mineral liberation. As you know, in the processes that follow, say like concentration, where you're going to use flotation, you need to have your minerals separated from each other. Okay, so in the liberation part, we are considering, say you have an ore which contains iron and copper. Okay, in that particular ore, you need for these 2 minerals to be separated if you need to apply the methods of concentration. As we'll be going forward talking about flotation, that point is one which we need to have at the back of our minds. So the initial stage of crushing, grinding, and classification is intended to make sure that these minerals are free, such that when you subject them to the forward process, they are able to be concentrated. Okay, here I'm just showing one of the equipment that is mostly used for crushing. And this is a picture of the jaw crusher that was used so much by the small-scale miners. Here also I'm talking about just classification and what sort of equipment is used in classification and separation. So briefly, these are just the equipment that are necessary for that. So briefly, we have considered the aspect of comminution, that is crushing, grinding, and classification. Next, we are going to look at the concentration methods. And here we'll be looking at the concentration technique of flotation and dense media separation. Okay? There are case studies that we'll be considering to try and explain more on this particular thing. One is the manganese processing in Mansa, and the other one is the exploitation of copper in Mudau. Hope I'm not running too much. I'm fine. Okay, so here basically is a flow sheet of processing of manganese. Okay, as you can see, the flow sheet is basically similar to the other one, but there is only one other aspect which has been added on the process before we get our end products, and that is the component of flotation. Okay, so we can see the first stage is crushing, then we follow it up with grinding, then we have what is called classification. Classification there is basically the particle size separation. Then we have a process called flotation. Okay, so this is a technique in mineral processing which is very, very important, and it has made life very easier for the large-scale mines and also for the small-scale mines. Most times people consider this as just a process which goes to the large mines, but this technique can be used at any level. You know, you can have it small, you can have it big. It's not very complex. The things that it stands upon are things which are easy and can be done within an area. Okay. But just before we go further, maybe let me ask a question. When we talk about flotation, what comes to your mind?
Flotation would be where water is pumped in, so that at least dilutes the solid, so that from there it's easier for the mineral to separate.
Okay. That's one. I heard other voices behind there. Can we talk together so that what comes to your mind?
Just for like the term says flotation. So I think basically floating on something. Yeah, I think that's basically something floating.
That's exactly what flotation is about. Something floating. Okay. When you get a piece of wood, you throw it into water, it will definitely float to come up. Okay? So flotation is basically having your minerals removed from a particular solution by utilization of an air bubble. Okay? So you need to have an air bubble introduced to the system to have that particular material floated out. The theory of flotation itself, or the technique of flotation, has been in existence for a very long time. It started around about 1906, and its major purpose was basically to float out copper minerals. Okay? So this particular technique made it easy for a bulk of material to be processed and treated. Okay? And then easily you were able to get a concentrate out of the material. So you would have copper of about 0.5, and then it is concentrated to levels up to around 20 to 30%. So this technique was the one which was utilized in Mansa, okay, by medieval small holdings to make a concentrate for use in the making of dry cell batteries. The technique of flotation is very selective, so you can make materials and concentrate them where you have materials that are close to each other. So because you have your flotation, you can be able to easily separate these materials. I should be able to give us an image of how the technique actually operates. But one of the important things about flotation is that you have a material, and due to its physiological nature, you know, you have materials that like water, and you also have materials that do not like water. So because materials, when you put them in that particular water, materials that like water will tend to remain in water. And those that dislike water will tend to want to come out of the water. So once you introduce, say, chemical reagents to those particular materials, they are able to float out and to be released from the water. Just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, we have a vessel there with two different materials. There is a material which is hydrophobic, that's the yellow material. This material does not like water. And you have the black material which is hydrophilic. It likes water that much. So what happens is that once you introduce, say, an air bubble to the solution, the materials that are hydrophobic will get attached to the air bubble and they will be floated out of the system. Okay, the floating out of materials which are hydrophobic is called direct flotation. Okay. And then the other process where you are having your valuable material remaining in the solution is what is called reverse flotation. This part, I think I've explained most of what is there. Basically here we're talking about the principles of flotation and what they are based on. Principles of flotation are based on the differences in physiochemical surface properties of minerals. So what we are saying is that naturally some fine materials such as oxides of copper, they have a liking for water. So whatever we were talking about earlier on, when we are considering like the minerals themselves, you notice that oxides have got a liking for water. And then sulfides have got a tendency to hate water. So what it is that when you have a mineral containing oxides and sulfides, then you know that the technique of flotation can be applied to separate your oxides from your sulfides. Why? Because your oxides would want to remain in the water, but your sulfides would want to leave the water. So you can encourage the sulfides to leave the water and leave the oxides to remain in the water. Okay. One other thing that is important to consider when it comes to the process of flotation is the aspect of particle size. I'm sure all of us know that metals do not float in water. So how is it that we can apply the process of flotation to materials which cannot actually flow in water? So when we are considering the aspect of particle size, we'll know that very fine materials, even if they might be denser than water, will tend to move on top of the surface of the material, on top of the surface of the water. So what it is that there is an importance in the particle size of the material for flotation to be considered. Okay. When we are talking about that particular importance, what are we saying about the particle size? We are saying that the particle size of the mineral that is being concentrated must be small enough to allow for adhesion onto the air bubbles, and also for transportation of the material from the solution. Okay, so that's basically what we're talking about when we are considering like the particle size. So the reagents that are mostly used in flotation are three. There is the collector, there is the what is called the floater, and also a regulator. The collector is the substance which encourages the contact of the minerals to the surface of the air bubble. To the surface of the air bubble. And then the floater is basically a material that stabilizes the air bubble. What should be known is that when you have an air bubble which is not stable, it's that once it collects a mineral at the bottom of, say, the vessel, as it's trying to move up, it may burst. So instead of you recovering your material, you actually be having it back into the pulp when you actually need it to float out. The regulator is a material which now aids the collector. Okay, there are two types we should be able to talk about in brief later on. So briefly here we have what is called the classification of the collectors. So we have collectors in two types. You have the non-ionizing and the ionizing. Then you have the ionic and the cationic when we are considering the ionizing. The ionizing collectors are the ones that have found most applications, like in our industries here in Zambia. Okay. And the most common ones that are applied are the xanthates. I should be able to just give us a brief picture of those as we continue. Okay. So just on top there, I'm giving us what the ionic collectors are. Okay. Adsorption of a collector is usually influenced by the chain length and the chain structure. So as you can see, a collector is mostly made up of two parts. There is the non-polar and then there is the polar part. The polar part is what gets attached to the mineral surfaces, where the non-polar part is the one that remains. Okay, this one influences the material and causes it to float out of the water. briefly here, I'm just giving an example of the types of collectors. But as you can see, some common collectors are chemicals which are known, such as oleic acid or sodium oleate. So these are materials that can be used. The other thing that we have are the sulfhydro collectors. These are based on bivalent sulfur and are most applied in flotation due to their potency and selectivity of sulfide minerals. Okay, so there I just have I just have some of the common xanthates that I use. Okay. The next part is what maybe we can consider, where we are considering the xanthates. Okay. The xanthates are assumed to absorb on sulfide mineral surfaces due to chemical forces between the polar and the non-polar group. That was what we were talking about. The solubility of the hydrophobic xanthates of copper, okay, lead and mercury are very low, but xanthates of zinc and iron are much more soluble. This particular part is important because when you are considering the solubility, say, of a xanthate, it will tell you what will happen when this material is introduced into a solution and you have these particles in that particular solution. If the xanthate cannot produce a material which is insoluble on the surface of the mineral that you want to concentrate, then you cannot be able to apply for flotation to concentrate that particular mineral. So you need for the xanthate to produce an insoluble material, okay, to create a film on the surface of your mineral for them to actually be extracted. But in an event where it cannot do that, then you cannot float out. So what we are saying here concerning the xanthates is that once they are applied, for copper, you would have insoluble kinds of layers on the minerals. Thereby, you can very easily float them out of your solution. Okay. So I think maybe this image will just give us a clear picture of what we are talking about. So that is what happens to your mineral once it's introduced to a collector and then it gets absorbed out of the solution. Here we are basically just trying to talk about the problem that is associated just with, say, like the contact of minerals. It's not always easy that once you introduce a collector into a solution, the minerals will actually get attached to the surface of your air bubble. So what we are saying is that for some minerals, say like zinc sulfide, where you are having a problem with your xanthate getting adsorbed onto the surface of the mineral itself, what is it that you do? So what we are saying here is that you introduce a substance such as an activator. Okay, we talked about the regulators earlier on. So when you have like your zinc in the solution and you introduce a collector, it will not stick to the surface. So what you need is to introduce another material, say like a copper. So the copper ions in the solution will create a fake film on the surface of the zinc, which will cause the collector to be fooled, to believing that the zinc is actually a copper sulfide. And in doing that, your zinc will now be floated, it will now be contacted onto the air bubble and floated out. So, this is about the chemicals associated with flotation and also the technique of flotation as it has been given. Okay, so one other thing is that here we can see some examples of depressants that are used and some examples of activators that are used. Xanthates of lead have very low solubilities in cyanide solution. So here we are basically looking at depressants, okay, which are used to try and cause materials not to float with the valuable minerals, okay. So here we are talking about some chemicals that are used for depression. That is, we are looking at cyanide. We are also looking at starches also, but I use as the present. So now we have looked mostly at the process of flotation, which is a concentration method. And we are trying to discuss it in more detail. I know there is a lot of material here which cannot be discussed to the degree that we want to discuss them in within the time that we have. But I just hope that you have gotten a brief understanding of what flotation is about and why it is done. So like what I was trying to say, mineral processing has got techniques. The first one is comminution, which is the separation or the crushing of materials so that we bring them to levels where they can be concentrated. So in the area where we have just been discussing, we've been trying to look at a concentration method, and that is just one concentration method which we have looked at, and that is, okay, thank you very much. I think I have 10 minutes and I've moved through where we needed to talk a lot more. Here we can be able to move and flow very quickly in within the 10 minutes. So we have actually talked about one concentration method, which is basically flotation. I know we may have said a lot of things, but flotation is not that difficult to look into. Next, we are going to look at another concentration method, which is basically the dense media separation. Okay, the dense media separation is a concentration method which works on density also. Okay, so when you have a material which is heavier than one other material, you can be able to use a fluid media to separate these two particular materials. Okay, so what the technique entails is that once you have your materials, you can find a media with a density that is in between those two minerals. Okay, so when you have, like say mercury, which is normally used for the concentration of gold, has got a specific density of around 8 somewhere there. And then you have, say, your gold material, which has got a specific density of round about, say, 19, okay? And then it is associated with iron, which has got a density of round about somewhere 6, somewhere there. So what it is that if you are going to take these two, a gold and an iron, and then you have them put into mercury, automatically what will happen is that the gold will go down and the iron will remain up. Okay? So this is basically what dense media separation is about. Okay? But dense media separation has got certain challenges. Okay? How do you find a fluid which is in between your materials? Okay? Because you have metals, their densities are different. So how do you find a common material which you can use for these particular services? I've talked about mercury, but as you all know, mercury is toxic. Okay. So the challenges that are faced in finding a media is the fact that they are either toxic or very expensive. So it's difficult for you to have them and to utilize them the way that you might want. The solution that we have is basically what we have been talking about, making a pulp from fine powders. So earlier on I was telling us something about the magnetite that was processed at Namato. So what it is that when you take fine powders and you put them in water, you generate or you create a pulp of a certain density. These pulps you can actually change, okay, their densities. So what it is that you can now create materials which can be used for separation. Okay? So dense media needs materials for mediums. And the materials for mediums can be made using fine particles, and then your minerals can be separated. Dense media has got an advantage. Here basically I'm showing just a flow sheet of how the processing of copper in Mumba was done. So on that particular part is where dense media separation was used. Okay? So you have your concentrate being processed and then your tailings being discarded. The concentrate goes for smelting. So not only do you have dense media separation, but you equally have the smelting aspect. So briefly here is where we have talked about the dense media and the things associated with it. I'm sure all these things are there, we can read them through. Okay. I just wanted maybe to say a few things about this, what is called a trompe cave. A trompe cave is basically what you can use to find a good place where you can extract your material using dense media more efficiently. What it is that you have an ideal cave there, and you also have the real cave. What is being said, you can see the blue one there which goes like a Z. So that one is showing you that once you have two materials within a medium, if you need to separate them 100%, then your material which is lighter needs to be taken out of the medium. And then the material which is heavier needs to be taken 100% into the medium. So for 100% there we are considering a material which is over high SG. Over low SG you have your recovery as the lower line on one side. But the real case scenario is where you are having the cave. So what we are saying is that you can find a good area there where you can apply your separation itself. Okay. So next we are basically looking at smelting of copper and the hydrometallurgy of copper. So the concept of the concept of copper smelting mostly is done by melting your copper. Okay, you use high temperatures to melt your copper and then to create two immiscible liquids. There is what is called a matte and also a slag. The slag has got properties that help you to purify your metal itself. Okay. So the equation there that we have is basically showing us where you have your chalcopyrite being smelted using fluxes to produce, and also your sulfur dioxide. Okay. Like I said, the importance of the slag is for purification of the matte, as it removes impurities such as arsenic and others. The other important aspect is for temperature maintenance. Okay. There are basically three types of slag that are here. There's a basic, the acidic, and also the neutral slag. Okay. Then the other material which is most important is your actual metal. Here we are calling it the matte. It's basically a copper sulfide. Also it contains some small amounts of other sulfides. So these are the two components of smelting. You create a slag, you also create your matte, which you want as your metal product. Okay, then the last part we are considering is basically hydrometallurgy. So in this particular hydrometallurgy, we are looking at using solutions to actually recover your valuable metal. Okay, you can get a solution and dissolve another within that particular solution and be able to get your metals. Okay. If you had sand and salt together, you can actually take the salt out of the sand using water. Okay. So when you get your salt and your sand, you put it in water, your salt will actually dissolve in the water. Your sand will remain solid. So you can take out the water and be able to purify it further by adding heat to evaporate the water, and you can have your salt. So basically what hydrometallurgy is about is a concept like that one, where you are having your minerals, then you are having a particular liquid media that you can use to actually recover your valuable metals. The mediums are different that you can apply there. But your interest is basically to dissolve your valuable material and then to recover it on a later level. So the methods of recovery are basically the electrical methods, such as electrowinning, and there's also the chemical precipitation methods. Okay. Leaching is basically oxidative and non-oxidative. Oxidative is whereby you are having you are aiding the dissolution of your metal using an oxidizing agent. Then when you are talking about non-oxidative, it's where you are not using it. You just, a process like that which is used for recovering copper using sulfuric acid is a common one. When you are talking about treating your gold minerals using cyanide is another common example of what we call oxidative, because there you need oxygen in order to effect your process. So here we're just having examples of equations for dissolution. Okay. Types of leaching, there are basically 4 types of leaching. There's what is called agitation leaching, there's percolation leaching, there's heap leaching, and then the final one is what is called in situ leaching. Agitation leaching is mostly done on fines and in tanks where you have an agitator to help aid your dissolution of the material. Then when you have percolation leaching, you have different bigger particle sizes, and then you are leaching them in vats and collecting your solution down there. Then heap leaching, your material is piled up in heaps, and then you have your say sulfuric acid poured on top of it and collected in points to recover it down there. In situ leaching is also called leaching in place because the materials are not moved, but they are leached where they are. Okay. So like I said, the metal recovery methods, basically we talked about 2. And one is where you are using electric energy, and then the other one is where you are using, like say, a metal, which is called contact reduction. Okay. The other thing I think I've talked about this is basically the recovery of gold using mercury, which is called amalgamation. So mercury has been processed using 2 different methods, which is the cyanide method and then the mercury method. So here we just have some equations to show that. And then briefly we are talking about how finally you are able to have your gold at the end of the day. Thank you very much for your time.
Are there one quick question? Okay. Then I would like to offer you.
There's a hand there.
Well, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name, can you hear me? Is this on? No. Can I be without? So my name is Matthias Fackel. I'm from the Geological Survey of Sweden. I have a colleague here who was sitting here just now. Her name is Joanna Lindahl. She's also from the survey. Joanna and I have held trainings in Work Package 4 together with a number of regional experts. And we are coming here today to do 3 things. We will present what we do at our trainings. We will try to let you know what we hear about small-scale mining in our training, because we talk about environment and mining, and quite often about large mines, large environmental issues. But we hear a lot about small-scale mining also in our trainings, and I will convey sort of a summary of what we hear. It will be, nothing will be new to you. You will have heard it before, but it will come from me, and you can use it as a summary of for the discussions you're going to have. I will also give you 2 examples of mining activities that we encounter that we find difficult because we don't know what to do with them. Okay, and there'll be 2 examples at the end. We'll show you those 2, and if we have time, we can talk about those 2 examples. I have, I think, 10 slides, and I will try to be brief. So we are from PanAfGeo Work Package 4. We're going to have 6 workshops, and they are, my colleague Joanna Lindahl, I've already spoken about you. Yeah. She always works, so she's been doing that. Joanna is an environmental specialist on mining and environment. I have a background in mining. I'm the one who makes environmental problems, and Joanna is the one who fixes them. So that's how we divide our work. So our trainings that we have, they generally 12 days of training and field work and a bit of group work. We usually come 2 or 3 from the STU with invited guests that talk about examples and subjects. We will cover things like impact assessment, mine closure, how to manage waste, how to recognize the different parts of a mine. We talk about public participation, how geological surveys or other authorities are involved in permitting and inspecting mines, how they interact with companies, with the public. So we've been to Senegal last year, we've been to Botswana. We are going to Tanzania in April this year, in a month. We'll be in Rwanda September this year, and we are intending to go to Mozambique and Nigeria, although those trains are not set in stone yet, but they will happen. So we talk about big mines and quite often what are recognized as large environmental issues surrounding the big mines. So we've had participants to our work package from these countries. A large group from French-speaking West and Central Africa. We see a large interest from French in West-speaking Africa. We have had, let's say we have 150 applications. 70% are from the other side of Congo. And quite often fewer from where we are now. It's not a problem, but that's just how it is. We see large, small-scale mining in countries like Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Liberia, Central African Republic. We have had participants from Botswana, Namibia, Swaziland, and from Zambia so far, where small-scale mining seems to be less it's not as big and less talked about. So when we hear about small-scale mining in all these countries, we see large differences between the countries where our participants come from. They have very different experiences and different ways of explaining small-scale mining as a part of the economy, or small-scale mining as, is it important, do we work with it? Some geological surveys will say that we don't have small-scale mining. So we have had countries to our training where there's ongoing conflict, war, acts of terrorism, where a government, as I've written here, isn't actually present in the country. Let's go into Central African Republic. The inspector can only go to like 10% of the country. If he travels too far, he's never coming back. So I've tried to list here a few things that we see are important for how the Geological Survey understands small-scale mining. So, of course, it's a problem if you can't go there. It's a problem if you are threatened by violence. Some countries, they will have a very small presence because in the case of, let's say, Liberia, they're building a geological survey, trying to make it work. Okay, we come to Namibia, they already know everything. Okay, we're like sitting back and saying, well, we've got nothing to teach you. Maybe. That's why I want you to come to the next training. So, and also, of course, the levels of poverty, of economic development differs a lot, and it changes the way people speak about mining. Like we heard a very nice example now from Namibia, where we're talking about assisting small-scale miners. We know they know how many they are roughly, what they do, and it sounds nice the way you talk about small-scale mining, and it seems to work. Okay, and of course people have different experience of small-scale mining, and importantly, the geology in each country makes small-scale mining possible or not possible, makes it profitable or not. So all these things affects the way we hear about the participant talking about small-scale mining. We see small-scale mines being enormously large, and they sometimes are very small. They are legal operations and illegal operations. They mechanize, they manual, they can be mined by people from the village, from the region, from the country, or from somewhere else. Especially in West Africa, you'll find Malians in Chad, Liberians in somewhere, and it's just, difficult to manage sometimes. In some countries, some surveys, there is an assessment of small-scale mining. They'll say, we've got 10,000, we've got 5, we've got 50, and in many places there's no estimation. We will find that in some countries, small-scale mining is governed quite efficiently. Sometimes they're assisted, or they are ignored because there's no resources, there's no time, or we don't really know what's happening. In some countries, most mining is criminalized. So if it's small-scale mining, is often it is often a job for the police. Or small-scale mining is a job for the armed forces, because they will straddle. They have illegal operations, they're supporting terrorism, there's, complicated. So we have seen ranges here from very difficult situations with very large small-scale mining that contributes to economies in a way that is difficult to assess. It actually looks, when I first came to small-scale mining in Zambia, it was in 1999 at the Kabanga Matthias amethyst deposits, and we meet people who say, please join us here, there's so much money to make. Okay. They're mining, and he'll say, I've been here for 30 years, and it's fantastic, you must come. And the guy, he's in flip-flops. That's it. But the vision is there to score, to make it big. Anyway, you all know this, but I just want to talk about what we see when we do our training about small-scale mining. So what the geological surveys actually do, because we are not only geological surveys here, are we? We have small-scale miners, we have, who are we here? How many are geological surveys? Sort of 30%. How many are small-scale mining associations, industry? 5. Where do all the others come from? Oh, other regulators. So, authorities, super. So we have seen examples of how geological surveys or similar authorities deal with small-scale mining. Some do say that we have this under control. The Namibian case, is it under control? Yeah, it's all right. Some surveys, they provide assistance, they say. Some will form separate projects, that is somewhat outside of the geological survey, that deal with small-scale mining separately, so that the survey does what they think is their job, to make maps, to help the big mines, to do those things, because the small-scale mining might not fit the mandate of the survey or the resources of the fund. So they will make separate projects, preferably funded by someone else, so it doesn't eat into your budgets. Of course, we have cases where small-scale mining is largely ignored for different reasons, or where the survey is quite unaware of small-scale mining. We have examples where there's cooperation between geological surveys and other government authorities or other sectors. And this list can be made very long, and of course the surveys have different resources, they have different legal frameworks, they know more or less about small-scale mining, and they're more or less independent from, let's say, a minister, other directives given, you know. Someone might not really fully be allowed to interfere with a small-scale mining area. It's a reason to stay out. Some geological surveys won't have a network where they can work with small-scale mining, because if it doesn't fit the small-scale mining, if it doesn't fit the geological survey, it can be difficult for the survey to deal with small-scale mining, because you don't know who to talk to. Because the small-scale mining might be a case for the police, it can be a case for health and safety officers, because it can be considered an issue of sanitation and disturbance of the for the public, rather than as a geological or mining issue. So these things are dealt with differently, and I think most surveys would like to end up giving assistance to small-scale miners. Some start somewhere here where they completely ignore it or are unaware. But they will form separate projects, and they will try to arrive at a situation where they can work with small-scale mining as a part of their day-to-day work. We haven't seen many examples where it works perfect. Like at this Geological Survey of Sweden, when we deal with the mines, it's quite often doesn't work. So, same at home. But I just wanted to remind you of what we hear of when we talk about mining. Quite often that we are not allowed to work with small-scale miners because we don't have the mandate, or it's someone else's problem. We don't have the resources, or small-scale mining ends up with someone very influential and we're not allowed to disturb them, or that we don't have networks where we can discuss small-scale mining. So we think that for geological surveys, it's quite important to understand where are you now, what are we doing with small-scale mining now, and who should I work with? Or who should I tell to help me working with small-scale mining? That's one thing. Actually, I wanted to say one thing about how's the time? So I've spoken for 20 minutes. Okay, 10 more minutes then. I was looking at this sign. It says as we're doing training, and I'm closer to 50 than 40 years. So at home in Sweden, people my age, they start to feel maybe not 20. Okay, so we start running and we start training and we want to get fit because we want to feel 20. And it's similar to what we do here in a way, because I went running this morning. And I run, and when I'm done running, I don't feel 20, I don't feel 40, I feel like 70. Because, you know, everything, it becomes like this. So I'm actually worse off after the training than when I started. And it only sort of gets better, you know, in 2 or 3 days. So when we do the trainings in Work Package 4, and I'm sure when we do the trainings here, we hear about a lot of things that seems difficult or impossible, or you hear about how fantastic they are in Namibia, and we have only reached this far. I'm using your Namibia as an example. So, but I guess that's how training is. You know, when you come out of this training, you might feel like 70. But eventually you get there. But you'll never get to 20 anyway, so those days are gone. These are just some words you should keep in mind. How independent are you? What do you know? What can you do according to the law? Or is there something that when you read the framework, is it really, maybe you could do more if you're a little bit flexible, or interpret it in a way that allows you to? Or do you give the job of small-scale mining to more of your fellow colleagues at other authorities? Okay. So we have traveled around a bit lately, and we've seen small-scale mining, and we've seen some large-scale mines. And I want to show you 2 examples that we can just think about and maybe have time to discuss. The question is, are these large mines or small mines? Who is responsible for this activity at these sites, but who is going to look after it? And which authority is in charge of these sites that I'm going to show you? So we are generally concerned of environmental impacts, also of social impacts and economic development. I don't know how much you've talked about it before, but we're going to look at 2. Okay, can you see this picture? How does it look at the back? Can't see anything. Okay, so we see roughly a high wall on an open pit. It's roughly 100 meters high. Okay, so this is an open pit, 800 meters long, 100 meters deep. These benches are 12.5 meters roughly. This is in a neighboring country to Zambia, to the north, very large. Yes, it's at a site where we have been, and we're going to write a little report on it. I won't tell you exactly where it is, but it's north of us. So this is it's a big mine, okay? And it's actually being mined by a mining company that are investing billions of dollars in what they do. But do you see can you see the little red dots here? The white thing here. So those red dots and the white things, those are people working in the open pit. So find, you see here, they found a bed, a seam where the minerals are. And they will dig holes through here, quite often more than 20 meters, and sometimes much, much further down. When the mining company moves out of the mine because they have several pits, and they feed their plant with material from different pits. So they move after one pit, they go to another. You have hundreds and thousands of people moving into that pit. They put up camps up on those high walls, like high up on the walls. So they're like 50, 60 meters up on a bench, and they are mining. And the pit water at the bottom, they use that to wash their minerals. Then they carry it on their backs out of the pit. It goes to a vending point where it's bought and then exported. So, of course, we see environmental and social issues with this. Who is going to stop them from entering the pit? Should they be stopped? Should they be assisted? Should they be evicted? How do you deal with it? The company has found a way. I'm not going to say how they do it, but it's something that you can discuss together or maybe with me later on. If we have time, when I've finished, we can go back to this picture. But you see, this is a very large pit. So this is difficult for us to understand. And it's difficult for other people to understand who are not from here. Because we've seen this in Chingola, we've seen it in other places. It's quite common. This is considered very dangerous. There's child labor, there's no environmental protection, there's no safety, but the mine is permitted and the mine is doing an excellent job with their own operations. So they have 8,000 people that they employ, but on the mining concession there's 250,000. So there's more people in the concession than in Windhoek. Yeah. Here's another example from Rwanda, close to the border to the Congo again. Here we see a plant where they do, it's a gravity plant. This is a shaking table. Are you familiar with shaking tables? They vibrate, they have a certain inclination, the water run over it, and you separate heavy minerals from light. It's a big plant. It will cost a few $1 million, and you see there's bulldozer, there's a front-end loader, there's a sedimentation tank that collects the tails from the plant, and several sedimentation ponds, they discharge clean water. It's not really a small-scale mine. Maybe in South Africa? Maybe? Is this a small-scale mine in South Africa? Okay. And at the plant and at the pits, there's a signpost saying that this is how you do. You wear protection. There's inspectors from mining inspectorate there making sure that everybody's got their hard hats, all the protection. But the guys, you see, this is a tunnel where the mining cassiterite, tin. Those people are supplying the feed to this plant, but they're not employed by the company. They are entrepreneurs that provide a service to the company to mine the deposit, and they deliver the product to this plant. Okay, so those are, in my book, small-scale miners. And in Rwanda, they get help to do their work as safe as possible. Not perfect, but it's all right. Do I have another picture? In the same, another part of the Congo, we see a plant that is a crushing and washing plant manual labor, you crush stones, you take out tungsten, wash it, crush it, and the plant is operated by small-scale miners. I would call them small-scale miners because they run the plant. They're not employed by anybody, but the facility is owned by someone. And the produce is delivered to a large company with its, they have an office in Cyprus, I think. They export tungsten. The company also provides adits, underground adits, where contractors can go in and mine. And those contractors, like this guy, he will sell his mined material to the plant. These are the people in the plant. And they then sell. So this is like a chain of, so for us when we work, because what happens is that the tungsten, the waste, is thrown into a big pile and it runs into a valley and goes off with the water that is maybe not that great. So it does affect the people in the area. But at the same time, there are operations that are quite good. It's some of the best small-scale mining operations I've seen, and I think they're examples for you to just have in mind. And the geological surveys or the Ministry of Mines, they do work here, and they have a way of permitting and assessing this. But the production is large, so I would call it pretty close to large-scale mining. But it's quite a complicated setting. Have you seen something like this before? Good. Okay, that's all I'm going to say, I think. So with those two examples, I say tack in Swedish.
So now we've got an introduction to work export.
It's good that we have had more presentations coming from the commercial point of view, encouraging you to produce and become rich. And at least now, today, starting from Matthias' presentation, we've started attempting to talk about environment. And then I'll go inside the environmental issues, especially you should pay attention to 5 components before we go into the nitty-gritty. You are miners, but you are polluters. No one has allowed you to pollute the air. No one has allowed you to pollute the water. Don't destroy the rivers. Don't destroy the vegetation around you. Don't destroy yourself. 5. So those 5 components, as we go into the nitty-gritty, you should pay a lot of attention. While you have been encouraged to become rich, your health, to me, comes first, including environment. And especially on environment, you are forewarned. If you continue polluting, in the book of Revelation, don't laugh. It's not a joke. You will be sent into complete annihilation. Full stop. You'll be destroyed. There's no penalty. Okay? So me, I will tackle the environmental issues in the artisanal small-scale mine. When we are looking at environmental issues, bear in mind that we're talking about impacts of your mining into the environment. Here we'll spend some time into the scope first before we go into the nitty-gritty. We'll talk briefly on the introduction, but we shall talk also about what are the environmental aspects. Other people call them environmental issues. Those environmental issues that come as a result of your mining, they produce a lot of impacts. So we'll look at the environmental impact which is coming from your mining. Some of them will be physical, some of them will not. Then we'll go and look at the health effects of what you are exposed to. When you're doing mining, there is dust particles that is emitted. Within that dust particles, there is silica particles that is not friendly to you. So you should be able to pay attention, especially when we come to this section. And in fact, when we come to this section, I don't want anybody to stop me. I want to go into details. The issue of land, we can proceed later. Then after talking about your health, we'll talk about the effects of dust on the environment. How does it affect the vegetation? This is the one which I'll talk about here. Then we'll move on to other impacts or spills will be discussed in that area. And of course, we'll also look at social impacts. I forgot, sorry. Then we'll also look at challenges of small-scale mines. When we broke into groups, this is one component that is very important because most of the miners don't have the muscle to conduct mining. So those challenges have brought in certain challenges that small-scale mines have. They will come out in there. Now, I also thought of bringing out promotion of sustainable development, which should come from you. And those cover the best practices that you need to know for you to address those 5 components. And then we'll also look at the effective statutes that you are in existence in your particular countries. It's a pity we have representatives in Zambia from small-scale mines, but we don't have representatives from, we have 7 countries that have traveled here. In my view, we should have also extended the invitation to the representatives of small-scale mines in those countries to be here. Then a mine also at one time will come to an end. We'll talk about decommissioning and how we're going to rehabilitate, and then we'll move on to post-closure. When you dig a pit, don't abandon it. That footprint where you put up the pit and you become rich, rehabilitate. You are not the only one who has been given a right to sit on that footprint. You can do your mining, but don't leave it abandoned. Then we shall move on to the environmental management plan. It's the heart of the environmental impact assessment. This is where you are going to talk about how you are going to mitigate your environmental issues in that EMP. Then we'll talk about objectives and the developers' responsibilities. In the developers' responsibilities, this is where I've indicated what you should do to stop pollution. And then the areas of concern ties with the developers' responsibilities. Then we'll conclude and recommend, pushing recommendations. In the introduction, here in Zambia, we are told that small-scale mining started in the 1930s. But we came to know about it in the 1970s. That's when it came to our knowledge. These small-scale mines, it goes through mining phases, starting from prospecting. I've brought out this for one particular reason. Every phase has got impacts. Some are insignificant, some are significant. But it starts from prospecting up to post-closure. And the small-scale mining in Zambia is actually concentrated in gemstone, semi-precious metals. There is less in copper. And the small-scale mining poses insignificant environmental impacts. And then since 1930s to date, mining activities has been expanding, and so is the population. The population requires survival as a result of mineralization. We need it to survive today. That's why mining is also encouraged. But this mining has 2 things, positive and negative impacts. The positive impacts is the employment, and it also gives us foreign exchange as well as revenue. And the negative impacts are gross, some of which will bring out a lot of conflicts. Matthias is the key polluter of these 4 components. Siltations. When he goes into the mining, he will produce silt. We shall define it as we move on. That silt, if you follow it, it is not allowed to go into a river. Contain it in situ. water pollution should be as clean as God created it. The law has given you the right to mine, but not to kill rivers. And so is air pollution and land degradation. So it's fair, isn't it? I talked about the physical impacts. Here we have, when we're doing exploration, we have trenches and small pits that are dug, and they remain unburied. And the diamond drilling sometimes it has chemicals that contaminates underground water. So if you have a borehole, your water should be clean. Here we have got 3 examples of physical impacts. The first one is the destruction of natural habitats, followed by destruction as a result of emission. You heard the presentation from Geological Survey where somebody was talking about processing. This is the area that you need to know. The other physical impact is the changes on the river regime, siltation. In the preceding slides, we have these pictures here. There are 6 pictures. Even if you don't read there, I'll explain what is here. The first picture is a tailings dam containment. It's borrowed from big mines. I know you are small-scale mines, but you need to grow, isn't it? And when you grow, you may have tailings dams at that stage. So I borrowed certain solutions from a bigger mine to come and discuss with you here. So that is a tailings dam that contains pollutants. So if you look at the second slide, the crack that you see there, if you ignore it and you are busy producing and selling, it will open up. And what you see there is not friendly. There is a lot of, that's effluent that contains silt. Silt is just solids. In Bemba, just a malova. In Lamba, even Lamba is malova, isn't it? Solids. And those solids and water, when they meet the third picture, what you see there is a small river that from time to time, for many years, it has been receiving silt. And then what you see growing on either side is grass, growing on what? On silt. Because it was a bigger river, maybe before we were born, because the depth of the river is close to 100 years. We don't normally notice it. And to us, we think it's negligible. It's not. So it will keep on reducing and dwindling slowly until it covers up. And that is what is shown on the 4th picture. What you see there is not actually water, but sandbank. You can even stand on it. Meaning, the river has died. So now you can begin to see now the next impacts that can come afterwards. If there are communities depending on the water there, conflict begins because there's high demand of water. Relocation, migration comes in because of your mining. So no one is less important and no one is important. We are all the same. Okay? So the impacts on flora and fauna, that picture you see there, you see my boss, Mr. Kunga and myself there. So there was a lot of grass there, but then the mine started transferring the laterite into the river. So if you're not controlled, the whole entire river will die. That is Northwestern Province. The impacts on general pollution, we have normally managed oil and fuel. I don't want to go into details of that when it gets into the river, because we don't have time.